Welcome to PCMC, Pop Culture Man Children. This is your one-stop shop for non-toxic fandom for pop culture ephemera. I am the host, Mike Bongiorno. I'm here today with my good friend and yours, Nadia Kader. How are you, Nadia?
I am okay. I am tired. This is near the end of the year for me for work. We have fiscal years. How about you,
For
Mike?
sure. I am also tired but energized because we're gonna talk about New York Ripper. So, so,
Amazing.
um, right before we got on the mic, I was saying, we were talking about this movie, and you said you hated it, which is, you could have said let's record on something else, but here we are. You can talk about why you hated it, and I could go. I want to go through it because I feel like I'm gonna go through the whole plot because I feel like no one fucking knows what this movie is. But okay, so The New York Ripper from 1982, directed by Lucio Fulci, who's very famous for the movie Zombie from 1979, or Zombie 2, as it's also called, because when Dawn of the Dead was released in Italy, they called it Zombie, and then he made his movie, and the distributor wanted people to think it was a sequel to Dawn of the Dead, so they called it Zombie 2. But it's actually really excellent. So now people just call it Zombie. So it's the only film I can think of that's called both Zombie and Zombie 2. Like there's no other movie that's like one or two. Have you seen that film?
I haven't.
So Zombie is here's what it's most famous for. A scene with a shark versus a zombie. And it is a real Peter was not involved in this. It is a real shark and a real guy dressed like a zombie under the water, like fucking with it. Um
Oh,
uh I don't remember exactly like I don't remember the vibe exactly if it feels like animal cruelty because the shark is pretty intimidating. But that's Italian cinema for you.
I think it's wild that the guy agreed to do that. That's just
Yeah. I
terrifying.
yeah. I think the big pitch on it is, hey, how about this? Shark versus zombie. You'll always be the guy who is shark versus zombie. Who doesn't want to do that?
That's I do have to say though, like you said that the distributor changed the name of the movie of Zombie, which is that is so much more common than we ever talk about. Like that's such a
Yeah.
weird choice, but it's happened multiple times with really they tend to be low budget kind of shitty movies anyway.
Yeah. The more schlock you watch, the more you become aware of movies that have multiple titles. Or like, movies that like they had one title where they were made and then they come to America and are given some weird title. Like my favorite is David Cronenberg's They Came From Within. When it came out here, it was called Shivers, which is a cool title as well. They're both cool titles, but there's something very cool about They Came From Within.
Shivers.
Yeah. Have you ever seen Shivers?
No. What's that
Oh, we,
about?
we got to do that episode one day. Imagine a zombie outbreak, but it's a Cronenberg movie. So when you become a zombie, you become unchained from all understanding of social norms and hierarchy and identity, and you also just are sort of living by the pleasure principle of wanting to fuck everybody and everything. And the way the outbreak, let's say, moves from one to another is by orifices. So you can either kiss and it could come out of the zombie's mouth. And maybe zombie's not the right word, but it's an outbreak movie. Um, and they turn into kind of like sex zombies. So it can either come through the mouth or come through any other hole you've got. So some people see it as being like, about STDs or whatever, or I'm sure most film PhDs would say that it's ideology that is being implanted in you, but it's fucking it's cool. It's some pure uncut fucking Cronenberg.
Okay, okay. Huh. I'm
I feel
just
like you're flabbergasted by what I
I
told you.
yeah, I'm like, okay, just or well, I'm also thinking like that's also prime opportunity to do like a porn parody.
Oh, for sure. If it were more famous, I'm sure there would be a porn parody. Maybe there is one in Canada.
The Canadian porn parody
It's also, I don't know
film.
how the movie isn't completely banned because in the movie there's a scene where an adult has two naked children on dog leashes. Um
Oh,
and as far as I understand, you're not allowed to photograph children naked and put it in movies. Also, the connotation is clearly like that it's some sort of sexual thing. And I just think about Cronenberg talking to these kids' parents, like, "Oh, the role? Yes, I'll tell you about the role. So your kid's gonna be like these stage moms come in and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna be in a movie. What's this? Oh yeah, your kid's gonna be stripped naked and put they're gonna be old and the kids are walking. I think they're walking on fours like ducks.
oh my God.
Ah man, Canada's crazy. What can I say?
That's wild. I I'm still making my way through like Cronenberg's filmography and um I think I texted you about it. I saw The Shrouds
Yes.
last this week and
Is
I'm
it good?
still grappling with it.
I haven't seen it yet.
I feel like there's so much to it, and like the more when I first got out of that movie, I didn't like it, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. And then I had some conversations with some of my like film community people here, and I feel like I'm still trying to figure out where I stand on it.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting place to be with a film.
Well, okay,
That's
so
truly you're truly challenged.
I am. So like this isn't like much of a spoiler, but like this was Cronenberg's kind of movie that he made to deal with the grief of the death of his wife, right?
Yeah.
And throughout the movie there is like conspiracy theories that are thrown in and like are told to this main character who is a French actor, but he is made to look almost exactly like Cronenberg, like a really thin build,
Wow.
mostly dark clothes, shock white hair. Like it's
Is
clearly
he a filmmaker?
no, actually, he runs a tech company that created a product called the Shroud, which is a burial shroud and traditional Jewish ceremonies like
Yeah.
a shroud. But the one that he created or his company actually has this technology where it is wrapped around a body and buried, and it's kind of like mini cameras. And on the screen of the tombstone, you can watch your loved one decay in real time.
Wow. That is like
That is the most disturbing tech bro shit.
but
Like,
but that's also like if you went into an AI generator and wrote make up a fake David Cronenberg movie.
it's
That's what it would spit out and you'd be like, yeah, yeah, that's good. That makes sense.
so the thing I'm trying to grapple with here, like, it's
Yeah.
not much of a spoiler, but like, there's a lot of conspiracy theories,
Real world
and
conspiracy theories?
well, in the movie of like
But about the
whatever's go
world of the movie or about
Yeah,
our world?
about the world of the movie. Like
Okay.
characters are telling the main character all these like different and everyone has a different one. And I'm like, what is going on? And it just pissed me off because it seemed like they weren't going anywhere. And I complained about it. Then I talked to one of my movie friends, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, but I think the wife in the movie was supposed to have cancer that died. Like the whole movie's about grief.
Uh-huh.
Cronenberg's wife had cancer. And something, I don't know if you've known about this, but apparently a common phenomenon, especially with people who have terminal cancer, is that there's this, the loved ones or the person themselves go through this period of like deep conspiracy theories of like why this is happening or how this is happening or
Oh,
that
like the
government
government is killing your loved one, not cancer?
or it's like the government or big tech or pharma are suppressing the cure for cancer. It's never like a specific cancer. It's always like all cancer could be cured
Sure,
by
sure,
one
sure.
thing because it's an industry, right?
Yeah.
And so when people are dealing with this with grief in that way, and it happens for like it's common with cancers, but it's also common with any kind of like really awful grief. It's like some people find weird comfort in diving into conspiracy theories. So,
Sure. I think that's what all conspiracy theories are for, is
yeah.
to find comfort, to find
Right.
order in the world.
Right, exactly. So like, but I never the film doesn't like really, push you in that direction. I had to have this conversation outside of watching it and
Okay.
then thinking about it, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe all these conspiracies were really this character just struggling with himself
Sure.
in this
I'm sure.
process.
Yeah.
So yeah, so now I'm like, what do I think of this movie? I have no idea.
Well, I'm glad you're excited to talk about Shroud. Sadly, this episode of PCMC is about the New York Ripper. 1982.
When was it filmed? Because I know it's early. I know it came out in 82, but it feels older. Does that make sense? Like,
Well, I think we have, in our current cultural consciousness, we have an idea of the 80s as being, whoa, totally tubular. And it looks like everything looks like the Max from Saved by the Bell. But I mean, but time, like people say the 60s didn't start until like 1964. Like time doesn't work that way. Like the early 80s has a lot of the brown of I don't know why brown was such a big thing in the 70s, but it was. And this movie has a lot of brown in it. This movie is beautifully ugly. I don't know if it's
leisure suits. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if the director is being intentional in making it ugly, but it's ugly. This movie is a Giallo film. So if you're not familiar with Giallo films, faithful listener, these are films that they're kind of like the movie Scream. Actually, the movie Scream is thought of as being like a pastiche of slasher movies, but in fact, it's much more pastiche of Giallo movies because Giallo movies have a lot of violence and killing and slashing, but they also all tend to be mysteries. And Giallo comes from the Italian word yellow, because Giallo started as a literary genre of like these little cheap little paperback novels written and printed on yellow paper because of how cheap they were, and they were lurid and dirty and filled with cheap thrills, and it jumped from a paperback to cinema. And probably the biggest director in this realm is Dario Argento. um but this is one from Lucio Fulci. One of the things that make this movie unique is that um these are typically Giallo films are typically Italian productions or Italian co-productions, and they're usually filmed in either Italy or Spain or somewhere not in America. But the New York Ripper, is filmed in New York in a way that no movie is anymore, because it's in fact super expensive to film in New York. So whenever a movie takes place in New York, they shoot like a couple of New York exteriors and then they do everything else in like Canada. So this movie, like, it's up there with Taxi Driver for like if you want to see dirty, gross New York of a bygone era, this movie's good just for that.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it also starts off with something that is not a thing anymore, which is you could drive your car onto the Staten Island ferry.
You're right, right. I live in Staten Island, and you did once upon a time, and Staten Island Ferry is a it's interesting because I never was an adult when that was a thing. I think it stopped during like right after 9/11 and then never started again. But yeah, there's a whole kill sequence that takes place on the Staten Island Ferry.
But very specifically in a car. That's the thing that
Yes.
like gets me. Is like this would not have worked
Yeah.
unless they had some isolated area, which was really hard to do, but it was a
Yeah.
car. I also remember being a kid and my dad driving us onto the
Oh, really?
ferry. Yeah. So it it definitely had to be right after 9/11 that they stopped him. So that
Yeah.
was 20 plus years ago.
Yeah, a
So
while ago.
oh,
This movie was
lifetime.
banned in the UK for many years. It's extremely violent and highly sexual. There's a lot of sexual violence, and there's a lot of cruelty towards women in this movie. Um, this movie is a problematic with a capital P, and this is something you saw a lot in Giallos, but I think even amongst Giallos, like Dario Argento has, I said to you the other day, like like Italian movies have boobs in them. That's I guess as an Italian American person, or I'm actually Sicilian American person who also has a master's degree in cinema studies, I tell you I have full rights to say that Italian movies are trashy and often are just filled with boobs, just boobs galore. And even amongst Giallos, this is extreme because like Dario Argento had like there's boobs in his movies for sure, but there's almost like a beautiful, weird sexual elegance to his trash, and this is like trashy trash. Like you could smell this movie. It smells like day old cigarettes and BO.
I that's funny because I pictured a very specific smell of like
Butt crack.
city butt crack. No, actually like dumpster juice in the crack of
Yeah,
like in Manhattan. That's what I imagine of like
yeah,
dumpster on the side
yeah,
of the street that you have to walk over to get on the sidewalk. There's even a scene in this movie where they're walking past garbage and there's just like a wall of garbage bags
yeah,
and it just keeps
yeah.
going. Like it's
Yeah.
so
And the
gross.
cinematographer was like, "Yeah, this is where we'll put the camera. This is right." Um, so the story is by Lucio Fulci, Gianfranco Clarisi, and Vincenzo Manio, and those three people did the screenplay plus someone named Giordano Sacchetti, and the English dialogue was by Anton Pagan. So another interesting thing about Italian films is very often, even still to this day, but not exclusively this day, Italian films are they don't record sound on set. They don't record live sound. They film the film and then they go and later dub everything in almost like you would a cartoon. And I tried to look up why this is, and I gotta be honest, I didn't do like any real good research. I didn't go to the library. I didn't find any books on it. I just Googled around. And that's my research. And here's some different explanations I've heard for this. One reason is that many Italian films are co-financed by other countries and they use actors from multiple countries and everyone is just using their own language. That one you could tell is true because if you've ever seen something like, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Clint Eastwood is clearly speaking English, but the other people, while English words are coming out of their mouths are not making English words. Also, these films tend to be co-financed through different nations. But another reason people say is that Mussolini had wanted the government to vet all dialogue for any kind of like insidious, you know, undermined ideology. And that's why dialogue had to be recorded after. Some others say it was just the quality of the sound, the sound equipment in Italy at the time. I don't know, but it's become a tradition because many Italian films still do it this way. But if you're not a keen film watcher, you might not get it at once. It might just have an uncanny feeling to you. Because they would very often be like, okay, this guy looks good, but we don't like his voice, so just cast a different voice. So you've got these dual performances of like one character done by two people.
Huh.
In general, how do you feel about Italian cinema?
A lot of boobs. That's
A lot of boob. Yeah.
a lot of boob. I think
Well,
you were
yeah. I
well,
was gonna say there's like some scholar of neorealism like you there was such beauty. Like obviously there's different movements. Neorealism is super artsy, and but like if you have a subscription to Shudder, you're probably mostly watching Giallo movies from the 70s and 80s, which is boobs.
yeah, I think though you're right. It's like there's something about this movie that takes it like to another level, and I think it's
Yeah,
like the simulated sex scenes, like um, oh my God, that there
yeah,
there's like a porno theater,
yeah.
sort of a porno theater, except it's a stage and a man and woman are having sex, and there's just people in the audience just sitting there smoking cigarettes, watching these two fuck, and you're like, what on earth
Yeah.
was this a thing?
It
Um,
had to have been. They film on 42nd Street. you see the old 42nd Street. There's a character who's walking down and you see the lights and the XXX and all of that stuff.
Right, right. That's before they cleaned up Times Square and put
Yeah.
like lounge
Disneyfied it.
chairs.
Yeah.
Disneyfied it. Yeah, well, I wasn't sure if that was a thing. Like I know the porno theaters was a thing. You could watch any movie that was
Right.
filmed in the 70s and 80s and you could see those. But like the watching it's one thing to watch a movie or just sit in a porno theater and watch porno movies all day. It's another thing to watch two people have sex. And that's what I
Yeah.
was trying to
I don't know if
figure
that was a
out.
thing because I've seen there's like the porno theaters and then there's like and I've never seen this myself, but then there's like you put in $1 and then like there's glass and like a thing comes up and a girl dances behind the glass. Like you've
Mhm.
seen that in movies. But I've never seen anything like this where it's just like a stage where it's almost like a little play, but they're just two people fucking.
Right.
A
It was
black man
also
and a white woman fucking.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. I feel like this movie was like, we're gonna be transgressive, but we're gonna kick it up a notch.
Hmm.
Interracial public screwing, and also what a
Open
female
marriages?
character,
We have open
op
marriages in this?
open marriages, and it was a woman going there herself to get off to watch, which is wild even for
Yeah,
now.
yeah. Yeah, that's such a crazy character too. This movie has a plot, but it's got more of like a vibe because sometimes you'll be following a character for so long and you're like, what am we doing? Is this just a crazy, extraneous subplot? And then they'll vaguely interact with the main character and you'll be like, oh, I guess it's related. Um, but let me start. So it begins under the Manhattan Bridge. There's an old man with his dog, and he's playing fetch with his dog. And the dog, of course, is off his leash, and there's dirt everywhere and debris and garbage because that's this movie. And he throws the stick, and the dog goes and gets a severed hand and comes back to his master with the severed hand. And then on the shot of the severed hand, it freezes, and the credits come over it, a real statement to the audience of the kind of thing you're about to see. You know, of course, this movie constantly has like sirens in the background, and it's got that like New York is very dangerous. Our lead character is a policeman named Lieutenant Fred Williams, played by Jack Hedley, an extremely unlikable protagonist. If he is our protagonist, he's a very unlikable guy. He's like your typical like um, cop who's like seen it all, heard it all, drinks too much, has no personal life, is completely bent and burnt out by the job. But like this guy's also like not nice. He's kind of like you don't really root for him.
No,
The
he's such
kid
a jerk.
the killer in this movie, there's so many weird specifics in this movie. The killer in this movie makes phone calls, but when they call, they do. Well, calls it a Donald Duck voice, which is interesting because I don't think that's really true. Like the killer does like a duck kind of like noise, like a Donald Duck noise, but then like when the killer's talking, it sounds more just like I don't know, like a little kid voice.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, it's very weird. So there's the killing on the Staten Island ferry, and I guess it's called New York Ripper because, like Jack the Ripper, it's like it's mostly killing women. Uh,
Usually naked women.
Yes. The killing on the ferry is interesting because this beautiful woman on a bicycle like almost hits this guy in his car and then he yells at her and then they both go into the ferry and she goes into his car to like write with lipstick like on his window like to get him back, and then like we see one of those POV shots similar to the opening of Friday the 13th, which you and I talked about, and she's like talking to the camera, so she's like, oh hi, oh yeah, I was just getting out of here, and then like you see the camera turn down and look at her bare legs, and it's like uh-oh, and then the killer stabs her with one of the also gross things about this movie is it's not like stab you're dead. We see like multiple stabs and screaming and like gutting. You know, the killer will stab you and then move the knife. It's pretty extreme.
Move it up like you're gutting a fish. And he's done
Yes.
that multiple times in the movie. And usually down up. So like stabbing in the genitals and
Yeah.
then going up the chest,
Yeah.
which is just really I don't think it's possible, but I mean, this isn't like we're not looking for reality here, but it's also incredibly gruesome
Yeah.
and painful for the victim.
Yeah.
It's
The
really
core
sick, man.
we meet again, this is such like a cliche character. We meet the I've seen it all. I have a weird sense of humor medical examiner. And he's like he says the words he says the killer put the knife up her quote joy trail. We should say also after she's dead, the somehow her shirt in the whole tussle, the shirt comes off, so she's got like the boobs out, and no bra, of course. Um, so we've got this first murder. The chief of police who comes in to yell at Fred is played by Lucio Fulci. There's this it's this whole New York vibe, like the chief of police is like, "Is there somewhere we could talk undisturbed?" And then the lead character, the lieutenant's like, "Yeah, there's a church across the street." So like that doesn't mean much to you and me, but if you're like an Italian person, that's some real slanderous shit. We meet another kind of shitty guy, Dr. Davis, who's a psychologist and professor, and he's like the expert that the cop goes to try to profile the killer. He also becomes probably the biggest red herring in the movie.
Yeah.
One thing about Giallo movies are they don't play fair. And by that I mean you can't really put the clues together and figure out who the killer is because they play really fast and loose with the rules and the clues, and the clues don't make sense. And sometimes there's some like real cheats in how things can work. It's just there to sort of shock you. Have you ever seen Tenebrae?
No, I haven't.
Well, spoiler alert, that's another Giallo movie. I think that's an Argento movie. And like there's a killer reveal and then like there's a second killer. Like it's just like there's just multiple killers. They just
That
let
was
that
remade recently.
was it really?
Yeah, because in my local theater, I was talking to the owner, he like this little indie theater, and he was like, "Yeah, we're supposed to put this poster up, but my staff was like, I don't think we should put the poster up because we have children come in." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And then he unravels the poster, and it's like a pair of feet with vaginas on it, and
Wow.
I'm like, "Oh!" And eventually they put up the poster, but they covered the vaginas with like
Wow.
paper. So, and I'm just like, that's bold AF
Is
to
that
send that out to theaters.
is that a
That's
remake of Happy Feet? Hey now, this is Pop Culture Man Children. We come out every Wednesday.
oh God.
Um, we meet another big red herring, a man who we don't learn his name right away, but he's a man that is missing two fingers on his right hand. And he's depicted as like very sort of swarthy and over sexualized and dangerous. And he's the one we see him go to this sex show that we were just talking about where there's two people on stage fucking. But then also in the sex show on the front row is this very well dressed, well to do woman who takes out a tape recorder and starts recording the sound of the sex. And she has this blood red nails and lipstick. And she kind of like masturbates while the people are fucking and she's recording. And she's holding like the recorder, kind of like that's part of it for her. So she's introduced after we've just been introduced to this other guy who we don't know anything about. The movie has a lot of these weird little cul-de-sacs that you're like, I don't know if what I'm watching means anything. Uh, so color is a very important aspect in Giallo movies. Giallo is a color. The woman is wearing sort of like black satin underwear and a garter belt. Um, the man with the two missing fingers is like watching her as she masturbates. There's this interesting montage that's like close up of sex, her hand with the red nails tightly gripping the tape recorder, and her lips in ecstasy, and then like the guy watching her, like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth of this whole like, congress of sexual images. The after the sex is done, they get off the stage. We follow the woman performer. She walks backstage, and another performer asks how it went, and she goes, "Eh," and which is funny that it's like show business for them. And the entire backstage is lit red. Everything is red. There's like red light, and everything is bathed in red. Then she enters a dressing room where the light switch doesn't work, but the entire room is lit green. So I guess we're meant to read it as it's pitch black. She sits in front of a mirror and uses a cigarette lighter to see. She removes her fake eyelashes. She walks and steps on the remains of the broken glass from the light bulb that broke. The killer stabs her with a jagged wine glass in the gut while yelling like a duck. So, for those of you playing at home, we have a death in the Staten Island Ferry, introduction of a cop character, introduction of a profiler character, Professor Davis. Then we meet this man that we don't know his name walking down 42nd Street, two missing fingers. We follow him into a sex show. We then focus on this other woman in the audience during the sex show. And then when the show's over, we start to follow one of the performers from the sex show as she goes back into the back room. So it's like our point of view, narratively speaking, is constantly switching around in this movie. Um, we see Lieutenant Williams, our main character. He's sleeping in bed with this beautiful young woman. Of course, her breasts are out. The duck killer calls him and says something about him being with his quote whore, and then says, "Can you guess who I am? It happened again tonight." And we find out that this beautiful woman's not his girlfriend or anything. She's just a sex worker that he frequents. How so when you're watching this so far, are you riveted? Where are you at this point as an audience member?
I know like these movies are not character studies at all, and
Sure.
I'm trying not to grade it or to use that judgment, but I found it just really hard to know who was who. Like I kept getting confused. I'm like, why is this person important? Why are we following them?
Right.
How are they connected to this? And that was just like really, I think that's what was like making me feel so disconnected
Well,
between.
you said you
And
hated it. Is this where the hate comes from, or do you find it like where's the hate come from?
I think I was just struggling to have any connection to it.
I understand.
Like
Yeah.
any, because sometimes like these kinds of movies, it's just fun to watch the murders, and I felt like the
Yeah.
murders weren't really fun for me. I think the duck talking was interesting,
Yeah.
but again, it's like it felt so disconnected from the movie itself, and then like the ending coming in of
Right.
like where, and I know that these movies are not like necessarily Oscar winners or anything, but I just felt like it came from some bullshit psychoanalyst
Oh
stuff,
yeah.
half-ass stuff from the 60s
Oh
that
yeah.
doesn't make any sense. And
Yeah.
I was like, I would rather there be no explanation at all. Like just murder, murder, murder. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I just hate when they try to like rationalize horrific violence with, oh, well, someone is suffering from a mental break or something. Like,
Oh
no,
yeah.
sometimes people are just awful. Like that's just
Yeah.
let people be horrible.
I think that's par for the course for the genre. I think there's a sort of is it the prestige? Like would the part where they're like, okay, here's who the killer is and here's why. Like it's sort of like I think part of it. And I think that goes back to like even like Agatha Christie or something. Like and it
Mm.
doesn't make sense. And there's a lot of bullshit psychology in it because why is that one guy why we know nothing about this swarthy man except he's missing two fingers and what kind of like cheap Freudian shit is that supposed to be? Like this supposed villain who's very hypersexualized is missing fingers. Are we doing like an Oedipal thing or like a castration thing?
I was also wondering about the comparison because the woman character who was, watching the sex stuff,
Yeah.
I she wasn't what I found kind of refreshing is in the movie, she wasn't necessarily demonized for having a really,
Yeah.
she was really kinky, she was in an open relationship, and it seemed like her and her husband kind of got off on her, like almost like
Yeah.
he was being cucked, right? Like
But
he
like his
really,
fetish was cucking. Like it's
yeah.
something they both did as it's I don't know. I think the movie tries to make it seem weird, but from our contemporary point of view, I felt like it was progressive. Like, sex is whatever it is for people who decide what it is for them.
Right. But I kind of feel like that compared to the other guy, that
Yeah.
the sleazy missing fingers. I feel like that could have been a really interesting sort of counterpart to there. These two people who are really motivated by kink and sex, but one is this woman who kind of like, she kind of, I guess for a lack of better term, is like it's not unethical. It's kind of just like she's doing things in a way
Yeah.
that agrees with her relationship, and whoever's involved is sort of consensual, where this
Yeah.
guy really, really blurs the lines and just treats women really horribly. It was like really I always felt like I had tougher skin than that, but there was something about the way this guy was treating the people he had sex with,
Mm-hmm.
like just really kind of made me sick.
Yeah. Well, also she's white as white can be, and although the character I think is supposed to be Greek, he is sort of coded as other. Um,
Yeah, he's very swarthy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, amongst all its other crimes, I think there's a racism that is cutting through this movie as well.
Yeah.
Um, because spoiler alert, this guy is not the killer. um, he's just like the main red herring, and I don't know. It's not clear. Like he works for the killer or he took a job for the killer, but he's not the one doing all the crimes.
I think I also got confused on that, like
Yeah, it's
because he was the
confusing as
red
hell.
herring.
Yeah,
Yeah, I felt like I was getting lost between the boobs, and I'm like just
yeah. Which is the name of my memoir.
lost between the boobs.
We meet it's funny, the woman who's with the tape recorder, she's not our protagonist, but she's probably the most sympathetic character because she doesn't do anything to hurt anybody. She should have been the main character. If they remade this, it should be from her point of view.
Yeah, I was finding her really interesting, and I
Yeah.
was rooting for her.
And good performance too. We meet her husband. He's this wealthy guy. We find out he's a doctor. They live in this beautiful mansion. He's listening to the tape that his wife recorded, and he looks turned on by it. He's not jerking off or anything, but he's just listening and getting turned on by it. It makes me wonder if he's in some way physically impotent or something like that. Like how he experiences sex, maybe not physically. But then she comes in and she's like, I'm going to take the Porsche, which is like real rich people coded. We see she takes the tape recorder from him, and then he goes, "Oh, have fun tonight," which because take the tape recorder means something's gonna happen. And then we see this hilarious shot of him opening a desk drawer, and there's just like thousands of tapes in there. So his wife just goes out every night and like finds somebody to fuck or does something sexual, and brings the tape home to him. And they have a beautiful marriage.
That ends tragically.
Yeah. So then all right, this next scene is pretty gross and racist. So the rich lady goes, you might be saying, Mike, why do you like this movie? I, I don't agree with it. It's problematic. It's gross. I guess I like it for its nastiness and its luridness as a work of art or whatever you want to call it. Um, it's a nasty little movie. I think it was actually literally one of the video nasties, like one of the videos that was not allowed in the UK. Like it's a if there's a spectrum of Italian horror, it's really there at the bottom.
I love that the term video nasty because it sounds like the most stuck up
Yes,
British foppish asshole of like this is a nasty.
it's just also funny to think about like there ever being a moral panic over VHS.
Yeah. I mean it is funny, but it kind of makes sense because
Yeah,
it was a cheap medium.
and
So
it
like
to your house, it brings stuff into your house, into your home.
well, I mean, it bring Italian boobs and death
Yeah.
into. Mike, I gotta say though, it's like I don't think liking this movie means any kind of moral failure or questionable. Like, I feel like it's okay to like trash, and I think this is
Yeah.
like a really interesting trashy movie. And I think aesthetically, you're right. Like, there's something really fascinating about how disgusting it is. It's almost like this is the VHS that John Waters would have in his home.
Yes, yes, yes. This is like it's like Taxi Driver, but made by someone who's a much worse filmmaker. It feels like that same world, but with a less keen eye looking at it.
I, I actually didn't see Taxi Driver, so I don't have that
Oh,
reference,
really?
but
Yeah.
yeah, I know it's one of those things I do need to see. But what I thought of is like when I think of like 70s or 80s New York, I think of two things. I think of like the Warriors and I think
Yeah.
of Coming to America. And I feel like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
two
Those
very different movies, but have that
very
similar,
great New
this
Yorks in
is,
those movies. Yeah.
yeah, really gross New York in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so this scene's gross. The woman goes to some dive bar, and it's like a dive bar slash pool room, and she's checking out this guy who has like this big bulge in his pants, and him and another, I guess, friend come and sit with her. The guys are, I believe, Latino. I mention this because I think the film wants us to read that fact as perverse or transgressive. And the guys, and she's just sitting there like demurely like drinking a beer, but she's entirely alone. And the guys are talking about her vagina and guessing what kind of underwear she's wearing. Then this is so gross, I'm gonna vomit. One guy takes off his like loafer, and he puts his like filthy foot up this woman's leg and kind of like starts like fingering her with his big toe.
Not wearing socks, you could see the hammer toe and everything. It's really
Yeah.
gross.
And you see, by the way, everything you see labia in this movie. This movie shows it all. But yeah, he's like, oh, his friend says Morales got silver toes, as if his, as if this is a thing these guys do a lot. Um, and then like she's like uh, enjoying it, but also like trying to not enjoy it, whatever. And then she's I guess about to come, and then the friend moves the table back, and she runs away embarrassed, and then the guys high five. Like, I don't know what they accomplished.
Oh, that was so much because she was enjoying it, but
Yeah.
also felt so much shame and
Yeah.
fear. So it's like a huge mix of emotions going on. I thought it was interesting. Like, you're right. I think they are coded to be Latino, but they also, the dubbing, or at least the English dubbing, use the term senora, which I'm like,
Hmm.
that's
Yeah.
not really Spanish, but
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, do you know what I mean? Like it's like not quite. I don't know enough Spanish, but I was like, I feel like they wouldn't say it that
Right.
way.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, yeah. Um, and the thing is, that scene, it gives us a little bit more of this woman's life, but it doesn't lead to anything. It doesn't lead to a death. It's sort of a scene all on its own. You could take that whole toe fucking scene out, and the movie doesn't change at all. Because guess what? Now we're introduced to another person we've never seen before, another new character, and this is a character named Faye. She's this beautiful young blonde woman, and she's sitting, and this is so cool. She's sitting on a train that is head to toe graffiti on the inside of the train. There's just graffiti everywhere. And it's only her and one other person, and the other person is the man with the two missing fingers. Um, and he sort of like is kind of like looking at her and menacing her. She gets off the train and runs away. It's a pretty interesting like runaway sequence, like very tense. She eventually runs right into the killer, who's holding a knife with a white glove. He slashes her, then goes to hit her again, and she moves, but we see the knife like bounce off the wall and make a spark. I guess it's almost like a video game where something lights up to tell you it's a clue, because later on it's going to be a clue. She then run. This is like a fever dream. She then runs into a building that's lit with like all this red lighting, and we realize she's like in a movie theater that's like playing a scary movie. And for some reason she sits down, and in between her legs, like from under the chair, the two arms come up to grab her. She then runs. Oh, there are duck sounds coming from the movie screen. She runs right into a man with a straight razor who slashes her. We see this man's face. He's not the same guy. He's not the guy with the missing fingers. She then wakes up in a hospital bed, and it was a nightmare. So you were like, "What was it all? What the fuck?" I think what we learn is everything up until the movie theater is real, and then the rest was a nightmare. I think
I
because
got
she's in the
lost in that.
hospital. Yeah, she's in the hospital for a stab wound. So that happened. We see the man who had the straight razor in her dream and he's in the hospital and he's sort of walking around looking creepy. And he actually passes the professor and the lieutenant who are talking about the killer. So you're kind of like, oh, it's the movie. We lost the movie again. Like this random character walked through the movie, and you're like, oh, let's stay with the movie. Oh no. So they just walk through, and he opens the door, and she's like, honey, and it's like he's her boyfriend, and we're like, okay, so she dreamed of her boyfriend killing her. Um, she told the cops what she saw. So now the cops are looking for this man with two missing fingers. He's a suspect now. There's a funny shot. It's unintentionally funny, but the cop pulls away in his brown town car, and almost every other car on the street is the same ugly brown town car. I don't think it's on purpose. I think it's just the disgusting 70s and 80s. Just like every car is just the shittiest brown. Like what was it in the 70s where they're like, yeah, brown's the color. Every suit should be brown, every car should be brown, all furniture should be brown, brown
with
paint. Yeah,
with
like
orange
brown.
accents, like the
Oh,
ugliest colors.
ugh. So we see the rich white lady again, and she's now in bed with the man with the missing fingers. They go to some cheap hotel. We see him tying her to a bed. The tape recorder is going, but we don't see her meet him. So, like, why couldn't the scene in the bar with the two random guys be her meeting the guy with the two missing fingers? Wouldn't that be narrative sense? Because that happens and it leads to nothing. And then the next time we see her, she's with this suspect, but that she's never had any. Well, I guess she did have an interaction with him. He was watching her in that theater where they were watching the live sex. Oh, whatever. I'm confused
But
myself.
well,
Uh,
they didn't show the meeting. It feels
no.
jarring. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what do you think of this? We see the professor, Professor Davis, the profiler, the psychologist, and he's at a newsstand and he's buying gay porn mags. And he buys like two or three gay porno magazines, and then the newsy guy puts it like inside of a newspaper, and it's like, okay, there you go. And he just walks away. It just I mean, it gives you the chance to see more naked forms, but the movie does go out of its way to be like, oh, this guy's gay. Is it us supposed to? How do you read that? What did you read when you saw that?
Well, I thought it could have been a standard practice for newsstand people of like, yeah, I'm gonna sell like gross stuff,
Well,
but
sure.
I'll give you a newspaper so you can like walk on the subway and pretend to be reading while you're looking at
Yeah.
naked people. Um,
But how do you
I
why it's in the movie? Is the movie supposed I can't tell if the movie's supposed to be saying, "Oh, he's not the killer because he's not into women," or
uh
he is the killer because he's gay and ill that's perverted and he's sick. Like I can't tell what the movie's trying to where they're trying to lead me.
so yeah, I wasn't sure. I thought it could have been another red herring.
Yeah.
Because I actually thought it had to be the psychoanalyst because it seemed almost like he was misleading the detective.
Mm,
But
okay.
that ended up not happening,
Well,
really.
in the scene, we really only see him with the detective in these conversation scenes, and he's like very smug and like academic in quotes, and like, I'm smart. And he's also like, he sees it as an intellectual endeavor, and he seems to have no empathy for the victims. So he's again almost nobody in this movie is likable, including him. We then see the woman, she's tied up to the bed. Then oh no, she's like sleeping in the bed, and she's tied up, he's sleeping next to her. I guess they had sex. The man with the two missing fingers is sleeping next to her. And then the radio's on. And then actually see a shot of like this radio DJ, and he's this real cool guy, and he's like, this is a message for the man with the two missing fingers on his right hand. Leave those ladies alone. And he's the one who calls them the Ripper. And she hears that and she's like, oh shit, I'm tied up in bed with this guy, and this guy's the killer. So, what does she do? She starts to freak out and get herself loose. She, then the fingerless hand grabs her leg. We see full labia in this shot, by the way. But it's a fake out because he's not really awake. He just in his sleep, I guess, grabbed her leg. She eventually gets loose and runs away. And while running away, she gets stabbed through the torso and cut like a fish. the same gloves on the hands, and the quacking is happening. Not the quackening, the quacking is happening. So the movie has revealed to us seemingly the man isn't the killer at this point, I guess. We see Williams, the cop, talking with her husband, and he's grieving. And like a complete douchebag, Williams takes out the tape player and plays one of the tapes. And the guy's like, my wife is dead. And you ought to be intelligent enough to realize that certain relationships are based on mutual trust and freedom. And then the shitty cop is like, yeah, your wife is free to live and free to die. Like, really, like, judging this fucking guy. Um,
God.
you and you're the cops. You're trying to solve this crime. See, like that's like he doesn't even have respect for the victims. Like
Well,
this movie has no respect for women in any way.
oh yeah, there's definitely like a I think that too, that misogyny kind of like really there's only so much I could take in a movie.
Yeah, I get it. Um, so Faye and her boyfriend, they come home to his apartment. We get the vibe that like she's never like stayed there. Um, we find out that she's an athlete. And it's weird at this point in the movie that we're still being introduced to things, but that's just this movie. The professor comes to visit them and he asks her if she's sure the man with the two missing fingers is the one who attacked her. And we learn the man's name is Mickus, which some people have been like Mickus, Mickey, Donald. Is there a Disney thing happening, or what's going on in this movie? Um, Peter, the boyfriend of Faye, we find out that he's a mathematician. He leaves the house, and then we see that she's suspicious of him. Professor Davis is trying to convince Williams that Mickus isn't a guy. He says Mickus lives for sex. He's a 42nd Street gigolo, but the profile of the killer is someone more intelligent. Faye slowly makes her way up. We're cutting back and forth. Faye slowly makes her way up the stairs with her bad leg, and she finds a room upstairs filled with dolls, and it looks like a kid's room. Just then, Mickus breaks into the apartment. In a desk, we in the kids' room, we find a letter on hospital stationery. Um, she hides from Mickus. Mickus, and he's breaking in, I guess, to kill her or get revenge on her or whatever for like making him a suspect. She eventually goes under the bed. She thinks he's left, so she goes to leave, and he grabs her. But out of nowhere, Peter comes in and saves her.
So was that really happening? Because I wasn't sure if that was a
Wow, yeah.
delusion or not.
I think it again. It's like you can't believe the rules. I was gonna say it is because we see him breaking in without her knowing it, meaning it's our point of view. But that doesn't really mean anything. Um, but if he's not a killer, then maybe he was just breaking in to rough her up and say like, "Call the cops off of me," if it's really happening.
But that's also a stretch because how did he know where he just saw her in
Right,
the subway. It wasn't like he was stalking her.
right, right.
You know what? Now that you recap that scene in the before with the professor, or the analyst, it made me think, okay, this is why I thought the analyst was the killer too, because he was like, well, the killer is way more intelligent than the gigolo that lives in 42nd Street. And it's
Right.
like, what? Of course a sociopath would say something like that. Like, don't think it's this idiot. I'm way smarter than this guy.
Yeah, exactly.
So okay.
Everybody's a suspect. They have certain red herrings that they lean into, but they also kind of make everybody act like a weirdo who's unlikable. So you could suspect basically anybody.
Right, yeah. So I've heard the term gigolo before.
Uh,
Like I feel like that only relatively recently did we stop using that term. Like it's very common in like media, but what does
yeah.
that actually mean?
I don't know. I always thought it meant male sex worker.
Oh. So I thought it was more like a pimp, but then
Oh,
I
I
don't
don't know.
I don't
Well, someone will have to Google that.
know. Not us.
Yeah.
Like,
Google what is a gigolo. Not a juggalo, because those are fans of Insane Clown Posse, and they're not in this movie. The killer calls Williams, the cop, and they're tracking the call. They get the location, and the cops, on the phone, the killer's like, "Oh, I've got your," I forget if he says whore again, but basically he's kidnapped the sex worker that the cop always goes to, the closest thing to like, I don't know, a friend that he has. And he's like, I'm gonna kill her. Um, So he traced a call, and it's like to this phone booth. There's a race to the phone booth. They get there and they open the phone booth, and there's just a walkie-talkie next to the phone. Um,
Doesn't even make sense.
yeah. We then see that the killer has the sex worker tied up. He cuts her open with a razor blade as the cop listens. The William says, "Rush over to her apartment." We see her cut her nipple down the middle, like bisect her nipple, and then he cuts her face and then her eye. Eye trauma is a thing for this director. There's a very famous scene in Zombie where somebody gets like stabbed through the eye with like a piece of wood.
Oh, man.
Williams climbs into her fire escape to find her, and she's already dead when he gets there. We see the Professor Davis playing chess with himself, and just playing chess alone. We then see Mikis's dead body outside somewhere, just like thrown on the ground somewhere. I think at this point the movie's really trying to make you think that the professor is the killer. The coroner tells This is another confusing thing. We're back at the coroner and they've got Mikis's body. Mikis again is the guy missing two fingers. And the coroner says that the body has been dead for 8 days. And therefore he couldn't have been the person who killed the worker. And the cop's like, that's bullshit. It's gotta be him, blah blah blah. It's confusing to us because it's like, so there was just a week in between these scenes, like a whole week went by. We just last saw him in Faye's apartment, and now he's like dead in a ditch.
So does that mean he was dead when Faye thought he was breaking in? So like, was it?
Oh, right. Maybe you're right. Maybe that was all. No, wait, because doesn't Peter see him?
I don't
I don't
know.
fucking know. It doesn't make sense. We've thought more about it than they did. Um, let's see. So okay. So Faye goes to the hospital that she saw the stationery. She finds a little girl in the hospital bed being read to by a nurse. And the nurse is reading her a story about a duck, and there are duck toys everywhere. Aha. The girl, see, this is so depraved. The girl has an arm that's been amputated. It's very depressing and depraved. And this girl, like you see sick kids in movies, but this girl just seems like I don't know if I don't tend to like the word realism because it doesn't mean anything, but she's sweaty, and the fact that she's missing an arm means like you just get this feeling that this girl is just being completely consumed by some disease. Faye goes back to where she was attacked and looks at the nick in the wall where the killer's knife slipped and hit. Then we learn, and this is the most janky screenwriting in history, we learned from Davis, the professor, that Faye has a history of hallucinations. Therefore, audience, you can't even believe the things you've seen before. Anything's up for grabs.
Why wouldn't that be the first thing is said to the police officer who decides that a man missing fingers is the prime suspect based on a woman who
Right.
has mental illness? I just
Right.
can't.
Why not show Williams interviewing her and her talking about the man with two missing fingers, and then we find out right there and then that she has hallucinations and no one believes her. But in general, how come we don't see her telling Williams anyway? Like, why is there for a movie that just meanders around? Why is there so much important story stuff not happening on screen?
Excellent question.
Like there's all these characters that aren't interacting, but then we learn to see that they have relationships, but we haven't seen them forge those relationships. They just know each other. Like when the professor comes over to their apartment, it's like, oh, you guys, what the fuck is this? He just comes over. Okay, so Davis, the professor, and Williams, the cop, they go to the hospital and they see the little girl. They see this because they've been tailing Faye. Oh yeah, right. At this point, I think the movie wants you to think Faye might be the killer. The nurse tells them that the little girl is dying and that no one visits her, but her bills go paid, and no one knows like who pays them. And again, just this movie's so creepy. At one point, somebody says she'll never grow up to be a woman, which is weird because it's like you see a little girl dying. There's so many things you could say, but the tragedy is she'll never grow up to be a woman. It's almost like man, no one will ever get to fuck her.
Yeah, it's really gross.
Yeah.
Unnecessarily gross.
Yeah. So we're coming to the end now, folks. By the way, if you're confused, it's not all my fault. It's also the movie's fault. Um,
It's the movie. The movie has no answers for you that will be
yeah.
satisfactory.
So we see Faye's in the kitchen with a knife. Oh no, sorry. She's in the kitchen and she finds a knife that has a tip missing. Aha, from the wall. So we're like, okay, Peter's got to be the killer. Peter's in the other room and he gets a phone call from the duck voice. Faye comes in and stabs Peter and he falls down the stairs. It has been revealed that Faye is the killer. But just then, Peter jumps up and he's doing the duck voice. He's the actual killer. It was a double mind fuck. So I went back and watched the scene from earlier, the scene where the killer gets a call and then you hear the duck voice. We see the phone ring. He picks up the phone and we start to hear the duck voice, but we don't see his mouth moving. So this is a cheat. But then we cut to just a close up of an extreme close up of his eyes, meaning he could, even though he was the one called by her, he's the one doing the voice, not her. It's a real cheap, it's a cheap cheat. Um, and of course, while he's like on top of her, hitting her in his duck voice, he's like, "You're just like the rest of them, young and beautiful, while I lie in bed in a stinking hospital." Peter is then shot through the face by the cop. The cop comes in, shoots Peter through the face. It's pretty brutal. It goes right through his cheek. It's really it's a cool effect. So the motivation is weird and perverse because his daughter is dying. So like, why are the crimes so sexual? Also, like the duck is the girl because he's talking in first person like he's the girl. He's like, I'm laying dying in a hospital. Just when this movie couldn't get sleazier, it has this very brutal ending with Peter's now dead, right? Because the cop killed him. But then the little girl in the hospital calls him on the phone, and it keeps ringing and ringing and ringing, and it can't pick up. Her dad can't pick up because he's dead. And we hear the sound of the ringing as we see the image of the ambulance with his dead body racing against the hospital. So like it even has this downer ending of like this poor little girl doesn't even have her dad around to talk to. Although that does contradict before when they say they don't know who pays the bills and no one visits her. Oh well, it's stupid. But so according to IMDb, the bastion of truth on the internet, there is a fan theory that there's supernatural things in this movie and that the little girl is the killer and she is like magically possessing the body of her father.
And is also targeting naked women
Yes, she
and
wants.
punishing women because she wants to be the one to grow up and have sex all the time.
Right,
Because that's
right.
how little girls think.
Yes, of course.
I hate that.
No, I think that's a completely stupid theory. If for no other reason than it gives her power when I think, the truth is the movie brutally she's just another female victim. She doesn't have power. She's maybe not sexually a victim, but she's, slowly dying in a hospital.
Oh man. And also like I mean, actually this is one of the few sort of believable things is that Peter is hiding his dying daughter from his girlfriend and she doesn't
Yes.
know. But
Yes.
it's also awful. Like it's just it's like wow, you're right. It's like the more you think about it, literally nobody in this movie,
Nobody's likable.
nobody's
Even
likable.
the little girl who's dying, and I don't mean this cruelly, the way that she's presented in the movie is somewhat loathsome. You know what I mean? You feel more uncomfortable and want to look away from her than like feel like sad for her.
It's very hateful. It looks like really
It is a
cynical
hateful
movie.
movie. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
hateful movie for sure. On a scale of 1 to 5 missing fingers, how many missing fingers would you give this movie?
Oh my God. A stump. That's I hate this movie.
Is there anything
I
redeemable about this movie for you?
No, I think it's definitely if you're into schlocky kind of like really exploitative movies, which sometimes I love, but there's something about this movie that just rubbed me the wrong way, and I wasn't for it. But that doesn't mean I would say no one should watch it. I think it's interesting in itself and that weird charm of being a very kind of trying to be a very New York movie, but also being a really Italian movie.
Yeah, yeah, I
That's
I
interesting.
agree. It's super Italian in its DNA, yet it's New York. And it's more New York than movies tend to be anymore because it's really shot in New York. and it looks like New York, and there's no faking it. I mean, you see the Staten Island Ferry. You know, like what is more dirty, down low New York than the Staten Island Ferry? A place that sells beer at like 6 in the morning.
A place that's designed to crash into the dock every time to land. Did you ever notice that? That
Yes,
like
yes.
they directly drive into the dock, so you just kind of I wonder what that experience is like for someone who isn't used to boats like
Yeah.
intentionally crashing. Does that scare people? Like, does that scare tourists?
Maybe. Is that, oh, see, I don't know anything about the nautical world. Is that
I
a
don't
thing that
either.
happens with other boats? Is that a normal thing, or is it like a ferry thing? And
I
also,
don't
what
know.
makes the ferry from a boat? Is it the way that it moves? Also,
I
is
don't
the
know.
ferry from this movie the one that's now owned by Pete Davidson? Because that would be cool if if he were like, "Hey, I got the New York Ripper ferry."
Wait, he owns a ferry?
Yes, he does.
What?
Yes, he does. Staten Island native Pete Davidson.
Does he live on Staten Island?
No, not anymore. He did. He grew up in Staten Island. I
Yeah,
think
he
his
made it
family still
his
does.
then he made it his whole personality for a hot second. Um, but I didn't know he owned a. I was like, wow, I guess of all the things to do with money that you make, I that's a weird choice, but I
Yeah.
don't.
I don't know.
What do we know?
Rich
We're
people are
poor.
weird. You know what I mean? Like, what's the point of this? Um,
Can he drive it? Like, is it docked
no, I don't
somewhere?
think. No, I don't think it's in. Like maybe if you have a license.
Or is it possible to take the Staten Island ferry and somehow get it into international waters where there's no laws and you could just ferry it around?
I think I could be completely imagining this, but I seem to remember reading something like the original idea was to like turn it into a club or something, and then that didn't happen.
That's hilarious.
Um,
That would be amazing, actually.
yeah, yeah. It would be fun to have a screening of this movie on the Staten Island Ferry, like the way they do like Jaws in like pools and lakes. Like come on the Staten Island Ferry, have a tall boy at 6 in the morning, and watch the New Yorker Ripper.
It's a half hour ride, isn't it? Like, so you would have to keep like going back and forth and missing parts of the movie. Not that the movie would make any sense if you didn't miss any parts of it,
Right.
but it was
Well, it's
just
90 minutes, so it would be like back and forth and back again. Uh, so you would
Matt,
end up in the place you wanted to go eventually.
I'm just imagine like getting on a ferry, not realizing that they're playing a movie like this, like this in this hypothetical scenario, and you're just seeing like a woman's nipple being bisected and
Yeah, yeah.
like that would just so throw me off. Or those that couple having sex in
Yeah.
the porno
Yeah.
live action.
Right, right, right,
Oh my God.
right. Um, tell me, are there any Italian films that you like or Italian Giallo films that you like?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I
Or even
feel
like, horror, any horror we could open it up to.
when you say Italian, I'm like, I can't even think of anything except Suspiria, which is like the most famous
Yeah.
Italian Giallo movie, which
Yeah.
feels like a cheat. That's like saying, oh, my favorite mystery movie is Citizen Kane or something. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, what about you? What do you have like a favorite Italian movie?
Um, well, of these movies, I don't know. I just recently saw. Oh no, I saw it was really good. Opera. It's
Oh,
sort of like It's a slasher kind of reimagining of Phantom of the Opera. I don't wait. Who
cool.
who directed that? That's 1987.
Argento.
Dario Argento. Yeah.
Would
He's a weird fucking guy. Um, as you would be.
Yeah. Would you say Argento is a better filmmaker than Fulci?
Well, undoubtedly. Undoubtedly. Um, that's the easiest question I've ever answered. Nadia, thank you so much for watching this movie that upset you and ruined your week. And thank you, as always, for coming on PCMC and talking to me about various pop culture.
Oh, this was great. It's fun. I like talking about movies that invoke any kind of emotion in me. So even if it's hatred, I'm ready.
Yeah.
So thank you.
We end our episode by saying go bye bye. Can you say go bye bye in a duck voice?
I already know I can't.
I'll
You want to try?
I'll give it a try. It's probably not gonna work. No, I could only make the. That sounded more like a gremlin. That sounded like Stripe. All right, I'll just say go bye bye.
Go bye bye.